House prices rise their fastest in 32 years. The RBA resists political pressure to suppress the housing market, and the latest news on the 450 house development at the Glenorchy showgrounds. This is all the latest news affecting Tasmanian property this week. The biggest story this week is that house prices have risen their fastest in 32 years. CoreLogic reports national dwelling values rose by 2.8% last month. And this is the biggest growth we've seen since March 1988. Hobart saw 3.3% growth last month, 7.6% growth over the quarter, and 12.5% over the year to date. Now, this is incredible growth, but why is it happening? Most people think it's as simple as the record low interest rates, but that's just not the case. Record low interest rates are playing their part. Borrowing is the cheapest it's ever been. And whenever borrowing is cheap, people invest. It's a good thing, since the alternative is letting their money sit in a bank account with record low interest rates. And the knowledge that those rates aren't going to rise anytime soon. So people have begun to invest in housing, but not as your typical investors. The RBA is telling us that housing credit growth to owner-occupiers has picked up, with strong demand from first home buyers, but investor credit growth remains subdued. So, not exactly what you're hearing in the news, is it? So what is happening? Why are prices rising so quickly? Well, when it comes to economics, the answer is always pretty simple, and everything else is just us trying to unlearn our own biases. The answer is supply. One of the biggest problems is the lack of houses on the market. This is one of the biggest reasons that house prices are rising so fast, and no one seems to be talking about it. Except for the statisticians. And I love statisticians. Supply is 25.5% lower than its 5-year average. That's 25.5%. Because of COVID and market uncertainty, buyers have been reluctant to put their house on the market or just plain unable to. So the number of listings on the market, that is, the number of houses which you can buy, is 25.5% lower than it has been on average for the last 5 years. Broadly speaking, this means that there's 25% more competition right now to buy a house. And if you're wondering how it all works, think of it like this. Say you were playing a game with 100 people and 100 balls, and the aim of the game is to pick up a ball. That's all you've got to do. And every year there's 100 balls and 100 people, and it's not that hard to get one. But this year, there's only 75 balls, and there's still 100 people, and they're all still trying to get a ball. It's going to be much harder to get one, and the friction is what's driving up the price. People are fighting over the little that's left. But what's worse is the RBA has given them the ammunition to do it. But none of these people would be paying more for these properties unnecessarily. Just because they can get more from the bank, it doesn't mean they want to spend more. The prices are rising because of the competition, and the competition is so high because there aren't enough houses on the market. And that's not all. Homes are actually selling faster as well. Tim Lawless, head of research at CoreLogic, tells us that for every one listing that's added to the market, 1.1 homes are sold. He's telling us that the demand is outstripping the supply and making the problem even worse. And while the pace with which new listings are coming onto the market is rising rapidly, it has been too little too late to help the supply problem. So, there's a lot more to consider than low interest rates when it comes to rising house prices. Now, what else can we learn from CoreLogic? Well, the biggest price increases across the market are being seen in the upper quartile of the market. That is, the 25% most expensive homes are experiencing the biggest price increases. Across the combined capitals, the upper quartile of the market recorded a 3.7% lift, while the lower quartile only recorded a rise of 1.6%. And that's good news for first home buyers who are worried that these price rises will only force them out of the market. Since the price of the cheapest 25% of houses is increasing at less than half the rate of the upper quartile. What's more, the annual change in rents in Hobart has increased 4.1% over the month of March for houses and 2.8% for units. Gross rental yields are also sitting at 4.5% in Hobart and 4.9% in regional Tasmania. These are both well above the national level of 3.6%. Also, the RBA released its monthly statement this week, after announcing, as expected, that the cash rate would remain the same. Despite rumours and a lot of chatter on and off the internet, the RBA is resisting any macro-prudential measures to depress the housing market. In the past couple of months, people have been calling for APRA and the RBA to implement policies that would make it harder for people to gain finance for housing. But so far, the two authorities are still saying what they're supposed to. That's not my job. The consistent message between the two has been risky lending hasn't increased, and we can only act on the danger of risky lending. I for one hope they stick to their guns, because any overreaching interference with creditors is only going to stifle the economy and produce a long-term woe in the housing market. The RBA also provided a brief insight into the state of the Australian economy. The statement from the RBA showed that the economic recovery in Australia is well underway. The employment rate fell to 5.8% in February, and the number of people with a job has now returned to pre-pandemic levels. GDP increased by a strong 3.1% in the December quarter, boosted by a further lift in household consumption. The recovery is expected to continue with above-trend growth this year and next. And household and business balance sheets are in good shape and should continue to support spending. Finally, 450 new homes will be developed in Glenorchy around the Hobart showgrounds, in a bid to make the most of this underutilised area. Of the 450 homes, 150 will be dedicated to social and affordable housing. The project has bipartisan support and $42 million in pledged backing from the government to fund Stage 1. The projected cost of the development is $235 million and will include new showground facilities, a mix of accommodation, an emergency centre for times of natural disaster, and a new visitor centre. This will provide a great deal of growth for the Glenorchy area, boost the local economy, and only make housing in the area more attractive. So, do what you will with that information. That's it for this week. See you next time.